Hey everybody, what is going on? HexLex here. Got another Master Duel video for you. So, coming at you with another mid-season tier list. I guess we are getting later on in the season there. So beforehand, I used to do tier lists at the start and end of every season, but that feels a little bit awkward because the new pack usually comes out like right afterward. So, I mentioned this before that I was going to do like a mid-season tier list moving forward. What I might actually do is, moving forward, do a tier list right after the new pack comes out, and then maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks later, to actually see where things are at once the dust has settled. The latter is kind of what this tier list is going to be. I didn't make one right as soon as the latest pack came out, but, you know, it's been, like, I think a little over a week now at this point since... it's been more than that. It's been a little over a week at the time of recording this, since the latest selection pack has come out, and I feel like I have a decent enough grasp on the meta to throw stuff up on a tier list here. Now here I have the 25 most popular decks currently in Master Duel according to Untapped, which is tabulating results from well over 100,000 games. Pretty good source if you ask me. And yeah, just because a deck isn't on here as usual doesn't mean I think it's bad or worse than Rogue. It just means it's not one of the 25 most popular decks. Also, a deck being in Rogue does not mean it's bad. I think that all of these decks are capable of reaching Master 1 and or topping a tournament with a dedicated pilot. So, let's dive right on into it, starting off with Adamancipator. So, this might be a hot take to some people, to others this probably won't be surprising at all. I'm actually just going to put Adamancipator in the Rogue tier, because... while Adamancipator does have a very high ceiling now that Block Dragon is back, I really don't think that it's any more threatening than anything else that's out there. I haven't even really been seeing Adamancipator on ladder. And if you go over to Untapped and look at their tier list, and you know what, actually I have it pulled up over here. Why don't I just show you here. Also give you an idea of the resources I'm working with. Here it is. But so... I'm going off Untapped based off Diamond and Master ratings. Like I said, well over 100,000 games. And yeah, Adamancipator's got a 45.3% win rate, which honestly, to me, is not super surprising. While the deck, like I said, does have a high ceiling, it is a lot more susceptible to hand traps, especially stuff like Droll and Nib, which are both very, very common in this metagame. I mean, you think about Droll versus Adamancipator, right? They Gallant Granite, add the Block Dragon, you Droll them. And what's Block Dragon supposed to do now? Yeah, it can, like, you know, continuously resummon itself, but not without resources to put in the graveyard. You have a hard time getting those resources into the graveyard if you're not getting a ton of searches off the Block Dragon. I think there's an argument that Adamancipator could be lower tier 3, but I honestly think Upper Rogue is the best spot for it. Okay, Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes is a pretty big one to talk about now that Primite's in the game. And I don't think it's going to be any surprise to anybody that I'm putting Blue Eyes in tier 1. Blue Eyes is far and away the most popular deck in this meta. If we go back to Untapped again, you see 30% popularity rating in Diamond and Master, well above anything else. Nothing else is even in double digits, let alone anywhere close to 30%. So, the big question to ask is, does this mean that Blue Eyes is the best deck in the metagame? It's certainly by far the most popular. I think the answer for me is going to be no, and I'll just do this now, I guess. I think that Snake Eye is actually still just a better deck than Blue Eyes, because I think it has an easier time playing through hand traps. You know, you think about something, again, like Droll and Lockbird in particular, or Nibiru. Droll is just a game, typically going to be a turn ender for Blue Eyes if you're doing, you know, your actual Blue Eyes plays. Nib, you can just wait until the end of the main phase when they have 2 Spirit Dragons up and just nib them there, and then now it's really, really hard for them to come back at that point. Whereas Snake Eye has a lot more options into hand traps like these. Snake Eye also just has a lot more options in terms of what and how it can play. Snake Eye can be Fire King Snake Eye with Dominus Impulse. It could be Azamina Snake Eye for the extra Omni Negate. It could still be Millennium Fiendsmith Snake Eye, simply for the extra bodies. Even without Beatrice, Millennium and Fiendsmith, as we've demonstrated here on the channel, are very much still worth playing in Snake Eye. So it's easy to look at that 30% popularity rating and be like, well, Blue Eyes is just the strongest thing in the meta right now. But no, I think the reason that Blue Eyes is seeing more play is for a number of reasons. One, of course, is new toy syndrome. Regardless of if it's the best deck of the format, the newest decks will always see a boost in play. Blue Eyes is also obviously going to be a fan favorite. Lots of people are on it because they really, really like the card for nostalgia purposes. So when a nostalgia deck is also a meta deck, yeah, you would expect that deck to see a ton of play. And you might even point to tournament results and be like, but Blue Eyes is doing well there. Well, yes, but popularity is also going to affect tournament results because, you know, the more people bring Blue Eyes over Snake Eye, the more Blue Eyes over Snake Eye decks are going to end up topping, right? So, yeah, I think that Snake Eye is still the stronger deck. I think it is it's closer than it was, you know, before Primite came out. And obviously the Drill Beam and stuff is very, very powerful for the deck. Won't deny that it was not only a consistency buff, but a pretty nice power buff as well. That said, I do still think that Snake Eye is still overall stronger than Blue Eyes. Not by a ton, but by enough. All right, I'm going to keep going down in order here. Following that's going to be Purrely, which I'm going to put in Rogue tier. I might even put Purrely above Adamancipator, to be totally honest with you, because while Purrely doesn't see a ton of play on ranked ladder, it does actually, or tournaments for that matter, it has still seen some success in community tournaments relatively recently. And yeah, you might see this and be like, well, but Adamancipator's board is so much more powerful than Purrely's. How could Purrely be above Adamancipator? Purrely can do what it does a lot more consistently than what Adamancipator does. It plays more low to the ground, which lets it play through hand traps a little bit better. It is pretty susceptible to droll, I will say. However, to be fair, if you get drolled on my friend Purrely, right, then you could still summon the Purrely from your deck. While, yes, you would not be able to search off the Purrely effect if you got Sleepy Memory, for example. You could still go Purrely for Sleepy Memory into Purrely Noir, and then search out the trap card, the Yeep, and then you're kind of good to go from there, right? So, yeah, I think a lot of the reason that people don't play Purrely is because it's a quote-unquote boring deck. You know, it hasn't really changed its game plan much since it came out. It's still kind of doing the same thing, but I think that thing is still good enough in this meta. I'm going to call it a rogue deck, and I think, yeah, I will put it, it's right around the same level as Adamancipator, but I think it's a little bit more consistent in what it does, so I'll keep it there. Okay, so last time I put Yubel in tier 3, and I'll stand by that on the previous tier list. However, for this one, I'm going to bump it up to tier 2. And it's not because I think I was wrong last time. As I just said, I stand by that in the previous meta, before this most recent pack and ban list, I do think that Yubel was a tier 3 deck. What bumps it up to tier 2 for me moving forward, and to be fair, I'm going to put it, I think, towards the lower end of tier 2, but what bumps it up for me moving forward is that it's actually, I think, just about the only Fiendsmith deck that can still do the Beatrice-style lines, even in a world without Beatrice. And that's, of course, because of Aerial Eater, right? Aerial Eater being able to send a Fiend monster from deck to the graveyard. Also, Aerial Eater, as we demonstrated in our updated Fiendsmith combo guide video recently, can be summoned off of even opening just Tract, right? If you open Fiendsmith's Tract, that can actually get you into sequence into Aerial Eater thanks to Necroquip Princess. So I think that the addition of Necroquip plus the banning of Beatrice actually works in favor for Yubel, very slightly increasing its value in this metagame. I do want to emphasize slightly, though, and the last tier list was at the top of tier 3. It's going to be more towards the bottom of tier 2 moving forward here. Branded, I'm going to put in tier 2. I'll put it above Yubel. Just continues to be an exceptionally good deck as it's been. You know, I think that it's one of those decks kind of like Lab that has so much flexibility in how you can build it and what tech options you can play, and just enough inherent power that it's kind of one of those like eternally tier 2 decks. But yeah, I don't think there's really much argument that could be made against that. Kashtira, I will put in tier 3. So I've misspoke in the past and just misunderstood 7th Tachyon role in Kashtira. It actually searches more than Rise Heart. You can search Planet Pathfinder by revealing the Giant Hand as well. Which, of course, Giant Hand goes into the field spell, which goes into Unicorn, which goes into Theosis, which goes into plays. The problem is Duel and Lockbird. As mentioned, you know, with other meta decks here, Duel and Lockbird is very prevalent and very good in this meta. And when you're relying on a searcher to search your searcher, that searches your searcher, that searches your searcher that gets your plays going, I don't think I need to tell you why Duel and Lockbird meta might not be the best position to be doing that in. Now, granted, you know, you could activate something like Dimensional Fissure in Kashtira, and I think for that reason, I'd probably be playing Dimensional Fissure over Macrocosmos if I was to be playing Kashtira right now, to be able to use against Troll and Lockbird like that, but... either way, I think that Kashtira is still going to be a tier 3 deck, still suffering from consistency issues. Even with the buff of 7th Tachyon, those consistency issues are also definitely hampered further by, again, the prevalence of Droll and Lockbird. Alright, Goblin Biker. This is going to be more Goblin Biker, I guess, pure, not necessarily combined with Memento. Memento we're rating later on in this tier list, but... Goblin Biker did get new support, not in this pack, but of course the one shortly before it, with the Grand Entrance and such. Definitely good support for it, but I think for a pure Goblin Biker deck, it's still going to be pretty firmly in the Rogue category. I will say that Goblin Biker is one of those decks that is... It's more than just an engine, right? It sees more competitive success as an engine than its own deck, but its own deck is still definitely worth talking about and looking into if you're really, really into this archetype. I think that, you know, it's still definitely good enough to get you there in a lot of cases. Sky Striker. Where do I want to put Sky Striker? In Rogue, and I think above everything else here, although not by a ton, to be fair. Sky Striker, I think, is just still very efficient at what it does. I'm more considering pure Sky Striker here than, like, the Tenpai variant. Tenpai Sky Striker is more of a Tenpai deck than a Sky Striker deck, so... but, yeah. I think that Sky Striker, even with all the stuff unlimited, is still... Power level just not quite good enough to make it a tiered threat, but still fairly decent in this metagame. Okay, so I have Engraver here to represent the sort of Fiendsmith style control decks, right? Whether it's Fiendsmith Bestial with like the cyber stuff that was saw play before, to now the more popular deck I've been enjoying quite a bit is the Primite Bestial Fiendsmith. That's kind of what the Engraver represents right here. I want to put this in tier 2, because I think this style of deck is really, really good, these kinds of decks. I even kind of want to put it above Yubel. I might change my mind. I think a lot of people would put it in tier 3, and there's a part of my brain that's saying to put it in there, but I don't know. I've played with this deck a lot in this metagame, and I played with the previous, you know, pre-Primite variants as well, and both felt very, very solid. So yeah, I would say like lower tier 2, upper tier 3, but I have so many good experiences playing this deck even while losing a ton of coin flips and winning anyway that I'm going to put it in tier 2. I think that this kind of strategy is very, very strong. These engines are all powerful enough that even when just played together without a, you know, another archetype that's going to give you a super robust and specific combo line, the power level of these tools is such that you can just play them this kind of toolbox style control deck, and that's more than good enough. It's just good in this meta. Tearlaments, I think I put it in tier 2 last time, which I will agree with the people who said that was a little bit high. I think I did overrate it a little bit. I'll put it in tier 3, but I'll put it above Kashtira. Losing Beatrice actually hurts Tearlament, I think, more than just about any other Fiendsmith deck, to the point where you probably don't even play Fiendsmith in Tearlament anymore. There's kind of really not too much of a point. Yeah, of course, Fiendsmith can always help you play through hand traps and put more bodies on board, but Tearlaments doesn't really do a ton with those bodies on the board, and also can play through Disruption decently well enough on its own anyway. So, yeah, I think that tier 3, upper tier 3 is a good enough spot for it. Valmonica I'm going to put towards the bottom of Rogue. While it did get more support, from what I understand, from what people in the comments were saying, the new support isn't even actually that good for it, which is a bit of a shame. This is definitely a deck that really, really wanted another nice power and or consistency buff, and to my knowledge and understanding, didn't really get that with the new wave of support. It got more options, but it seems that it's a little bit dubious how good those options even are for the deck. So, unfortunate if true. But I'm not a Valmonica expert myself. Maybe this is actually, you know, should be higher up in the tier list. But from what I know about it, I'm just going to put it here. Okay, Voiceless Voice is a deck you really don't see very often. So this is one of those decks where, like, you know, you might think, Voiceless, I never see this deck. Why would you even consider it for the tier list? Well, because it's actually very, very strong, and its win rate is such that I'm going to put it in tier 2, I think maybe even above Branded? Yeah. Voiceless is kind of like Ritual Beast, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, where it's one of those decks where even if you don't see it a lot, that doesn't mean it's not good. And in fact, it is still just going to be one of the stronger things you can play in this meta, especially if you're a dedicated pilot and can pilot it, very, very well. There are other decks I think I'll put in tier 2 above Voiceless, but I'll leave it here for now. Tenpai might actually be one of those decks. Okay, I'm going to put Tenpai in tier 2. But do I think it's better than everything else I have in tier 2 so far? I actually kind of do, honestly. And that's kind of a scary thing. This is with Song and Kaiman at 1. Post-banless, Tenpai is... I mean, I knew Tenpai was not going to suffer too much, but... I don't know. At the same time, like, Tenpai is more of a nuisance than a threat at this point, in my opinion. I guess that's how I feel whenever I face against it on ladder. Like, when it first came out, it was, like, legit a scary thing you had to really, really plan around. Well, not really, really, but you just had to keep in mind, right? Nowadays, I kind of feel more like... I don't know. Just with the limited resources, it's so much harder for them to pop off. They're a lot more reliant on the hand traps. So if you can play through hand traps well, you can play against Tenpai pretty well. And even then, when they actually start getting going, I've noticed this when playing Primite decks. If you just drill beam the Shundra a lot of the time, not every single time, but a lot of the time, and then they kind of just can't do anything after that, which is kind of funny when that does end up happening, but I still think they're a really, really good deck in this meta. Just very, very easy to steal wins with it. I'll put it below Voiceless, because I actually think Voiceless is probably a little bit higher power level, but yeah, that's good enough. Drytron, I'm going to put in Rogue. Drytron's actually really comparable to Adamancipator. Like, sometimes they really pop off, but they're also just so susceptible to being disrupted that it's really, I don't want to say it's rare they get to pop off fully, either of these decks, but yeah, they just lose the hand traps a lot more than other stuff here. Ritual Beast continues to be the best deck you've probably never played against. It's just one of those decks, we see it a lot in Duelist Cups in particular, where the top 100's full of Ritual Beasts, even though you never see them on ladder, because this is a very difficult deck to play, and those who can play it well are going to be able to utilize it to its fullest extent. I think that in this meta, Ritual Beast does continue to be a tier 1 deck. Again, the best deck you will never see on ranked ladder, more than likely. Okay, Sharks. Sharks are not bad. I'll put them... I think they're pretty comparable to Goblin Biker, right? Now, if Totally Awesome were legal, that'd be a completely different story. However, I don't know if it'd be completely different, honestly. It'd probably be upper Rogue, if not tier 3 at that point. But, I don't know. Yeah, the new Shark stuff is really cool. But I think moving forward, it's probably going to get seen more often as an engine than anything else, really. Stun is stun is stun is stun is stun is stun is stun. I'm going to put it like here-ish because, I don't know. These other decks more towards the bottom of Rogue, I feel like are more than the others, like flavor of the month stuff, like because they got, more support recently. Whereas stun is always kind of around. But as time goes on and more floodgates get limited, the deck is definitely suffering more and more, which you will not see any complaints from me on. Gimmick Puppet, I'll keep putting it in tier 3 because, yeah, I mean, it's out there, it's a threat, but it's so easy to end up countering, even accidentally, especially in this meta where Bestials are seeing more play and are really, really good. I've been seeing more DD Crows on ladder too, and those are the exact kind of effects that Gimmick Puppet really doesn't want to see, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, I kind of almost don't think Gimmick Puppet needs to be hit in Master Duel specifically because of the way the meta ends up playing out. That if Gimmick Puppet were to ever suddenly start to creep up and become a meta threat, it would be very easily countered pretty much overnight and would stop seeing play, again, pretty much overnight. Alright, Memento. I think Memento is really, really good. And I think moving forward, it's going to be one of these decks, kind of like Voiceless and Ritual Beast, where it is a little bit more difficult than average meta decks to play. So even if you don't see it a lot, it is still quite good. I actually I'm not going to lie, I kind of want to put Memento at the top of tier 2, because when this deck gets going, it really gets going. And the amount of stuff it can not only put out on turn 1, but also do on, you know, turn 2 during the opponent's turn as well is just downright scary. You know, the ability to like add like, you know, Elf for Gaddock for Mace back in hand. Now all of a sudden you have another take control disruption. You know, you have end boards where you can end on IP going into various things. Of course, you have the combined creation as basically acting as an Appaloosa, but it's so much more than just that. Old Memento really was just kind of like get out the combined creation, you know, plus a trap card and maybe something else, and then, you know, you're good to go. But the ceiling for this deck has been raised by so much. Do I want it to be at the top of tier 2? Yeah, you know what? I think I do. I honestly think I do. And I kind of want to learn this deck a little bit more moving forward. I kind of want to dive into Memento and really get some more practice with it. Exodia, or rather Millennium, not like an Exodia draw deck, you know the one. I'm going to put it at the top of Rogue, I think, because I do think it's better. You know what, actually, I'll put it in tier 3 above Kashtira, because I think it's better than Kashtira as well. It's definitely fallen off a bit, but if you're going to play a deck with a bunch of floodgates, I think that playing the Millennium variant is way better than just playing like straight up pure stun, because the Millennium variant has, you know, the Exodia with the spell trap negate and the huge attack points, as well as the Exod Fires of Rage board wipe to back it up, as opposed to only relying on floodgates, right? Excuse me. So yeah, I think that's a good spot for it. Labrynth continues to be, again, just a very... I'll put it... You know what, actually... I'm going to put Lab up here. I think it's a tier 2 deck still. I might even want to put it above Memento. Yeah, you know what, I'm thinking back to the previous Duelist Cup and how well it performed. And this is, like I said earlier, true of Branded as well, but way more true of Labrynth is the fact that, you know, it can adjust its text very, very well to play into any given meta, especially because, you know, you consider for a Labrynth, those texts include literally any normal trap card, just exceptionally good going into almost any metagame as a result. So as long as those normal traps have the Labrynth backbone to back them up, I think that, you know, you're always going to see Labrynth to some extent. Another Eternal tier 2 deck like Branded, but not just mid tier 2. I think this deck is still exceptionally good. Dragon Link, you know, I'll put it like here because I think it's right around here, not only in terms of power level, but very comparable to Adamancipator and Drytron, where, yeah, deck has a pretty high ceiling that can be pretty scary if it goes uninterrupted, but also doesn't play as well into hand traps as a lot of their meta decks right now. Oh, Mathmech. I love this deck, but I really cannot put it higher than tier 3. I actually almost put it in Rogue just now, although I do think it is still a better deck than probably these ones here. But yeah, I mean, it's just like I've been saying for a lot of these decks, it's kind of harder for it to keep up in this metagame when it... I mean, Mathmech plays pretty decently well through hand traps, so when compared to something like Snake Eye, definitely not anywhere near close to that level. White Forest is really interesting because it's kind of just been seeing less and less popularity as, you know, these other meta decks are just seeing, you know, more and more play. I think that White Forest... Okay, I guess the question I want to ask myself is, do I think it's better than Yubel? I think the answer to that is yes, so... I think it's probably better than the control deck. I think it's, like, comparable to Branded. I'll put it a little bit above Branded, I think. Alright, so let me look over this tier list one last time and make sure I'm happy with where everything is. I think I am, actually. You know, as I'm looking at this, I think that, I think this looks quite good. Again, remember that Engraver, or if you're one of those folks who just skips to the very end of the video to see where I end up putting everything, Engraver represents the control decks, not just Fiendsmith decks as a whole, so. The, like, Primite, Fiendsmith, Control, you know the ones, so. Yeah, I think that this looks pretty good. And you know, when I look at this tier list, I honestly do see a pretty diverse metagame. I know a lot of people are going to be like, but all I see is Blue Eyes. And yeah, in terms of what's actually out there, yeah, sure, it's mostly Blue Eyes. But, I mean, in terms of what's viable, in terms of what you can win with, like, I don't feel like Snake Eye and Blue Eyes are that much better than, you know, the very many tier 2 decks here, right? I know a lot of people will argue that Snake Eye is, but Snake Eye, I think, really comes down to knowledge check more than anything else. Not just like how well do you know Snake Eye, but how well can you use your hand traps. I think a lot of people, when they say that hand traps are useless against Snake Eye, that's a little bit of self-reporting there, because it's like, well, they're not if you play it right. So, anyway. Yeah, I think this looks pretty good to me. So, as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. Always eager to hear from you. And thank you for, if you did watch the whole video, and not just skip to the end to see the list, which I don't blame you if you did that either, but if you watched the whole thing, that really does mean a lot, because that is, as I've often said before, as it remains true, the best way to support smaller YouTube channels like mine. Because, yeah, that watching all the way to the end really gives a nice boost in the algorithm, recommends it to more people as a result, and honestly, it just feels good for me to know that, like, hey, people care about what I had to say. So thank you all around for watching all the way through it. But that'll do it for now. Let us move on to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which, by the way, is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.